Hi, my name is Courtney Thornton. I'm here at Channel 6 Action News. I will be interviewing Lisa Thomas Laurie, one of the anchors for Channel 6 Action News. I'm interviewing her for my senior project, in which I am interviewing someone who has my dream career. My dream career is to be a broadcast journalist. This interview will give me first-hand experience about what it is like to be a broadcast journalist. What obstacles did you face on the road to becoming a journalist and while being a journalist?
What obstacles? Well, as you might imagine, back in the 70s and 80s, there was some resistance to women, and especially minorities. Mm-hmm. And I can remember having men, specifically white men, who were in the business much longer than me, tell me things like, you really need to pay your dues longer, and a lot of times women and minority women would be put in anchor positions because of this crackdown, and there's so many years where we weren't allowed to do the news and didn't have those opportunities. We would be put in positions next to men who'd been doing it much longer. So there was some resentment there. And in field reporting sometimes, I remember when I first came here and did a story with Ted Kennedy. He was coming out some political event. And he had a few drinks, mm-hmm. And I don't think that men initially took women very seriously in the business. So we had to survive that hurdle. And I'm trying to think. So there was some sexism, and you just plow ahead, and you just forge ahead and continue to do the best you can do, and you have to prove yourself over and over and over again. So those were the typical obstacles. I had a personal obstacle in that when I came to Philadelphia, my news director told me I had too much of a southern accent. And in Nashville, it didn't matter, and obviously in Oklahoma, it didn't matter. But I got a speech tutor and to work with me to get rid of my southern accent. Whenever my family comes up, I always get it back, but it's more of an Appalachian twang, you would call it. So that was a little bit of an obstacle. But after about 6 months, and now it's funny because now they don't seem to mind accents so much. You see a lot of reporters with British accents and southern accents, and it's not so important as it used to be.
Now, what do you do behind the scenes for ABC?
What do I do behind the scenes? Well, when I was out ill for about 2.5 years, and when I came back, they couldn't hold my job for that long. So I do a lot of special reporting, and sometimes I come up with my own ideas, and sometimes they have ideas for me. So I'll go out and gather news, and we produce our own stories and write our own stories. Someone else edits them now. But basically that's what I do that you don't see in front of the camera, is write and produce a story, like for a special that I'm going to do at 11 o'clock. Now, you'll see sometimes, I don't know if you've seen, I'll sit there, Jim's here doing, he'll say Lisa has a special report tonight, or Nydia has a special report, or Aaron O'Hearn does special segments on our internet. So those are the main things that I do behind the scenes.
What did you originally want to be, and what made you change your mind?
Okay. I always wanted to be a magazine writer, and because I used to love to write. I started writing when I was in 6th grade, and I would put on school plays and write plays and cast all my friends in the plays. And what changed my mind was actually came out of necessity. I was a freshman in college, and I had gotten a state grant to go to school, and my grant ran out the first semester, so I needed to get a job. And a friend of mine told me that they were hiring a weekend weather girl at the NBC affiliate in Huntington, West Virginia. I went to Marshall University, and I went down and tried out for it and became the weekend weather girl for 3 years in college, and loved it. And then I changed my major from print media to broadcast journalism as a result of that.
But so did you have like an idea of what magazine you wanted to write for originally?
No, not really. I knew that I knew that I loved to I like to write on things that were happening in the world today. As I got older in high school, I like to write on events like the Vietnam War, things that were really happening, and do research. Some things that would take a little in-depth research and a little time to put together.
Yeah, we're actually learning about the Vietnam War in class.
Are you really?
The things they carried.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it was fascinating.
What is the hardest part about being an investigative journalist?
Gosh. Sometimes you work on stories that you think are great, you start working on them, and you've got some time invested, and it turns out it's not a story. And that's really hard. It's not just hard for the reporter, it's hard for the station that invests time and money in stories. And that happens a lot. I mean, you start working on something, you start working on a source, and you start pulling on a thread of information, and all of a sudden you go, oh, no, that story's not what we thought, and it's really disappointing, but you have to let it go. So you end up working on things that don't end up on TV. I think that's really hard. Sometimes we start on, I think one of the hardest things is sometimes you start on a story and you know that story is there, but there's no way you're going to prove it. And it just kills you. You want to put that story on, but you have no way of getting it onto TV. There's a lot of legal restrictions. You know, there's times that you know if you could record someone talking, you could get the story, but the law, would not allow you to do that in the state of Pennsylvania. So there's all sorts of restrictions, and I think the other thing is right now, resources are hard for us to get to do investigative reporting. It takes a lot of time. So that's frustrating.
What types of stories spark your interest?
Stories that expose something people need to know about. Stories about wrongdoing. Stories about, I don't love it when people are ripped off or hurt in any way, but boy, I know when I get a hold of a good story, when I know somebody has done something wrong and I can go after, when I can go after that, I love that. And when we can get action, when we know that because of our story something better happens, something changes for the better. Those are the kind of stories I love to do, where we know that we make a difference by telling, exposing something.